Hello everybody, I'm ChibiJo and I'm here with another Elder Scrolls reading, this time King Edward, Book 7. We're getting ever so close to the end. So you saw a demon and killed a rat with its tooth? Well, that's a fine ebony dagger, tooth is. They're rare, so you want to take real good care of it, Myth said. I can't tell you about the blade, except it came from Meralen's father. It's the one his brother sent him to repair just before we ran away. Would you like to hear about how they got the dragon's tooth that Matt's carved the hilt from? Edward nodded, caressing the curved hilt with its slightly carved, intertwined roses, thorns, and leaves. It was well after supper, and everyone but him and Myth had left the fire for one reason or another. Ilara and Meralen had gone for a walk hand in hand, and they were holding Meralen's newly healed left hand in both of hers. They'd laugh and shaken their heads when he'd offered to come along. Not tonight, Ilara had said. Go to sleep soon. We'll be leaving before dawn. Willow had gone to visit a high elf friend. Beach, Sias, Mats, and the Khajiit woman, Silk, had also gone off together, laughing. They'd invited Myth to come along, but Myth had declined. Khajiits, they're all turning into a bunch of shameless Khajiits, Myth said. The short dark elf sat close to the glowing embers, knees to chest, his hair and eyes glowing in the dim light. If you're going to pair, you should pair, not turn into a tourney. They'll be selling tickets next. But each to his own. Khajiits think we're weird because we like eating as a group. Silk says it put her right off her food at first, listening to everybody chew. Well, having a bunch of watchers puts me off. I suppose you're too young for this kind of talk. Edward shrugged. It was a beautiful night, crisply cool, no moon, but the stars were very large and bright. Anyway, it was just a few months after Mats had joined up with us. We were up in Skyrim, traveling from town to town, just 3 kids seeing the country a bit, picking up odd jobs where we could. Meralen entered tournaments, if we heard about them, but he wasn't winning that much, just about enough to cover healing him up afterwards. You can get beat up pretty bad fighting Skyrim style. That's without shielding, or spells, or any other spells for that matter. No magic allowed, even if it is into the death. And he drew up a few types that didn't mind seeing a little dark elf blood spilled in the sand. Or a lot. And the crowds were against him at first. It can get pretty lonely in the arena, especially if you're beating the hometown favorite. And it's even worse if he's beating you. So Mats and me would be the only ones for him. And sometimes we didn't dare cheer too loud. They'd look real funny at a Nord boy cheering at Dunmer back then. Of course, Mats was so big, not many wanted to start anything with him. That was a long time ago. Meralen's the favorite now if things get tough. Of course, the crowds will cheer for a good match, but hardly anyone really wants to see him lose now. They like seeing the best, even if it comes wrapped in a dark elf hide. And when he walks into an arena, you know you're seeing the best. Not but what they'd like seeing a Nord that's better, and Mats may get there soon. He doesn't fight his best against Meralen, though. Maybe he doesn't want to, or maybe Meralen just knows him too well. Or, well... Oh! Well, you wanted to hear about the dragon. So Meralen was gambling with this Nord in a tavern one night, trying to pick up a little easy gold. The pot's pretty big, and the man can't match his bet. So he says he'll put this map on the pile and tap Meralen. Says it's a map to the hiding place of the best blade ever made. Says there's a spell on it so that you'll hit your opponent, you get as much heal as he gets hurt. That some mage hit it just before he died, so's only someone worthy of it can get to it. And you think I look worthy? Meralen says, grinning. We were young and dumb, but not all that dumb. The Nord grins back and says, I saw you fight in Falkreth, kid. You look like you'd take a chance. Why not? The story alone is worth the gold. You ought to be a bard. So anyway, Meralen wins the pot and tosses the man enough back to keep his throat wet all evening. Just for laughs, we look at the map. It showed the Dragon's Teeth Mountains down in Hammerfell. Real wild country, and there's an X and some writing saying Fang Lair. Mats gets excited and says he's heard of the place, but he's never known just where it was. And you still don't, I say. Any fool can draw a map, just as any fool can look at one. I could do as much myself. Matt says Fang Lair is an old dwarf mine, but there's supposed to be a dragon there now, and the dwarves are gone. Moralen looks real interested in the mention of a mine, and asks what they mined there. Matt says mithril and gold. Moralen says, The mithril had him interested. We couldn't really afford any good weapons, and mithril's scarce, but it's light to carry for its worth, and easy to mine and work if you know how. And he did. He didn't believe in the magic blade or the dragon, but he thought the mine might be real. Mining's in his blood, as it is in all the Rathium, the royal kin of Ebonheart. It took us a couple months to get there. We couldn't afford horses. We never would have found it without the map. It's a tricky country, full of canyons and hidden valleys. We sure never expected what we saw when we did get there. You can see the towers from the canyon mouth. Way back in there, dark elves live right in caverns if they mine, but the dwarves had built a hall over the top of their mines. It's a pretty thing on the outside, narrow towers and arched bridges between them. Delicate looking. You wouldn't expect work like that from dwarves. Merged right into the rocks too, and there was a big stone dragon mounted above the gate. Well, that's your dragon, Mats, I said. And the inside wasn't much to look at, just rock wall. The doorway was enormous, but the doors were gone. There was a balcony running right around a big open pit, probably the start of the mine, turned into a hall. And right in the middle was more treasure than you could imagine, piled up almost like a haystack that had been flattened out. And what had flattened it was a golden dragon curled right over it. We didn't even see him at first because he had blended with the rest of the gold. Well, we just froze in place. We hadn't seen a sign of a live dragon outside. The place smelled of brimstone, but most mines do. And there that dragon was, just laying there. It's got to be 2 miles to any kind of shelter. I told you there was a dragon, Mats whispers. Shh, Moralen had said. Look what's in front of its nose. I'd been busy looking at his nose, believe you me, but there was a sword lying right there, naked, sure enough, and the blade was dark metal that looked just like his dagger. You two start back, Moralen had said. I'm going to try for that blade anyway. If that's not ebony, I'm a wood elf. Maybe the dragon's dead or asleep for winter, or maybe it's not alive at all. Just something the dwarves made to guard their treasure. Just like the scarecrows the Nord farmers put in their grain fields. At worst, I'll distract them long enough for you to get clear. I'd a mind to take him up on it, but Matt just shook his head, and I was kind of ashamed to go back alone. Let's just all clear out, I said. That thing looked real enough to scare me away, but Moralen cast invisibility and heads on down the stair, not making a sound that even I could hear. I could see Mats hated letting him go alone, but Mats couldn't sneak past a blind deaf beggar in a fish market, so we strung our bows and figured we could try to get off a couple shots and maybe get lucky and take out the eyes if the dragon woke up and went for Moralen. Matt and I move around to where we can get onto a tower stair fast if we had to, figuring the dragon can't get in there. Then we scrunch down and peer between the railings. Not that there was anything to see except the dragon lying there, which really is a lot to see at that. Then those dragon eyes popped open and my heart gave one big jump, and they seemed to quit entirely. Dinner comes to me today, the dragon says. Take a good look at my hoard, Dark Elf. You will not steal it nor even view it long, but your bones will keep it company forever. I don't want your hoard, dragon. Just the sword you guard. I'll trade you mine for it. Mine's bigger. I couldn't see Moralen, but his voice was coming from right near where the sword was, which was practically in the dragon's mouth. I get a meal and both swords. Why should I settle for just your poor sword? Let me pass, and I'll get you more gold from below. I have gold enough, the dragon yawned, and I thought he was going to swallow Raylan right then, but he turned his head away from us too. Max was looking to get a shot, but it was really dark in there for Nord eyes, and he was scared of hitting Moraylan, since he couldn't locate him that well by sound. Of course, Moraylan's too smart to get between us and the dragon, but Max wasn't smart enough then to think that far along. Slavery dulls the wits in some ways, Matt says, and he hadn't been free for very long. I could see well enough, and I could tell by sound exactly where Moraylan was, but the shot was clean out of my range. But the dragon goes on. But there is something you could do for me, elf, and prolong your life. Prolong your life a few more minutes. A few more minutes sounded pretty good just now, dragon. What would you ask of me? Moraylan's voice sounded as calm and easy as if he was asking if there will be rain tomorrow. He can keep his head in a tight spot, I'll give him that. I have a toothache. It's too far back for me to reach in with my claws. Canst see it, elf? And then the dragon gaped his jaws to bare his teeth. Moraylan's invisibility spell wore off about then, and I could see him standing there, staring up into that cavern of a mouth. Lower your head a bit so I can get a good look. He puts out his hand and pulls the upper lip aside, cool as you please, and examining the inner gum carefully. Damnedest thing I ever saw. It's abscessed, like gum once lancing, and the tooth should come out. I can lance it if you trust me in there with a sword. And why should I trust you, dark elf? I hear no good of your kind. You must be spending too much time with Nords, then. I wouldn't be able to kill you before you killed me. Why should I even try? Listen, I have some friends above. Suppose they hunt you up a nice fat deer. I'll lance your gum, and you can let me go and eat the deer. Else you can just eat me now, toothache and all. And what makes you think your friends will return once they're away? They're not very smart, I think, for them. They'd be lost without me. Good hunting, guys. They can't find a deer. Is there anything else you like? Pig? Maybe a few rabbits? Nuts? Berries? Hurry up, will you? But we had hand signals, and his hand said to get out of there and stay out. I'd have been glad to. I mean, I'm fond of Moraylan, but I didn't see my dying alongside would bring him any comfort. I'd have been glad to see him clear if it was me that was on the menu, and I'd figure he felt the same way. But that thick-skulled Nord wouldn't listen to me, said if dying beside him was all we could do, then that's what we do. Nord nonsense. Sounds good in a song, though. So we took a couple hours getting a deer and headed back with it. I figured Moraylan was filling the dragon's belly by now, and the dragon would be happy to add a deer, another dark elf, and a Nord to round out his day's rations. Moraylan was still sitting there, chatting with the dragon. He didn't look that pleased to see us either. Told us to leave the deer and go, and he'd lance the abscess once we're away. But Matt said he's been thinking. Oh, brother, I thought. Matt doesn't think too often, and that's a good thing, really. He decided he can get a chain round the bad tooth and fasten down the end of the floor, and the dragon can give it a good yank himself. The dragon likes this idea, so Moraylan lances that abscess to take the swelling down to where the dragon can gulp the deer with some comfort. And they rig up a chain and get that tooth out. Made a hell of a mess, that. Blood and pus everywhere. And Moraylan's got us casting heal spells on this dragon to stop the bleeding and close up the wound. Good, very good. All right, Moraylan, you've proven yourself. Take the sword and go. Moraylan looks at him. You mean this was some kind of test? He says. How long have you had that toothache? Long indeed, as you measure time, mortal, yet not very long at all for the dragon kind. Hear my story, then. A scraggly young mage came along, hoping to steal my gold. I caught him at it. We had increasingly harsh words. He attempted a spell aimed at me. His pitiful spell affected me little, but I killed him. But, The dragon had looked away briefly and then resumed his tale. The little runt had apparently cast a homemade curse spell upon himself, and when I crunched him... And the dragon scowled fiercely, remembering they continued. Anyway, the ache only came on bad when someone came along to try for the sword. The sharpest pain went away if I ate the intruder. but I usually didn't. Though I've singed a few in self-defense. Waved a bit of fire, and most of them fled. Deer are plentiful. There is something unpleasant about eating someone you've talked to. A greasy mage gave me indigestion for days. Cramps and runny bowels and too much gas, even for a dragon. So that true thing never did completely go away. And the people who've come along haven't been very pleasant either. All in all, one of the most unpleasant stretches in my life. And I couldn't stay away from the vicinity of the sword for very long, of course. Part of the curse. Well, we can stay for a while if you like. We're good company. I'm Moralen. My red-headed friend is Myth. And the big guy is Mats. I'd still like to look for the mithril below. And I've never had a dragon friend before. I might like that. You have good friends, and even though you have said that you must do the thinking for them, I think that they could do some thinking on their own, and it would appear that they have decided that you are a worthwhile fellow. The dragon hesitated for a second and actually managed to look shy. You could call me Akatosh. So we stayed for a couple weeks, hunted with the dragon, and now that's an experience. Searched the mines, didn't find much down there, but the dragon gave us the jewels from his hoard and said he only needed the metal. They absorb it into their skulls where they lie on it. So we did pretty well out of it after all. Raylan tried to give Mats the sword, claimed that he'd have sure tried to kill that dragon if we hadn't come back and would have been toasted. But Mats wouldn't take it, said the dragon gave it to Moralen, so that was clearly who was supposed to get it. Mats took the tooth, and he made the hilt you've got now, and gave Moralen that too. Told me he'd never had anything worth giving before, and it made him feel good. He's real pleased Moralen chose to give it to you. I think Matt should have gotten the sword, Edward said. He didn't try to steal anything. It was really brave for him to come back, and even when he didn't think it'd do any good, Moralen tried to steal, got caught, and then just tried to talk his way out of it. You all could have been killed because of him. That's just what Moralen said. Well, Mats likes that big axe of his better than any blade anyways. Edward sighed. I wish I was brave like Mats. I guess I'm more like you. Aye. Moralen's voice sounded behind him, starting the boy. Taut tongue like Myth. No matter. I'll be well pleased if you're as brave I'll be well pleased if you're as brave as Myth. And if once I'm gone they say no more of me, then he did what he had to do. My spirit will be at peace. So that was King Edward, Book 7. We are nearing the end. We got 5 more chapters to go after this. And then we'll be on to whatever adventure the books send us on next. So I will see you guys next week. Have an awesome day and a good night.